Thank you for joining us here at Hope for Our Times. And listen, we have a different program for you today, and it's going to be really good. So I am, as you can see, I'm not in the studio. I'm at LAX right now, and I am with our good friend. And this is fantastic. So Pete Garcia is joining us today. And Pete, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
It's great to have you here. I mean, we haven't been able to do this in a while. What a blessing this is. And I need somebody that can connect while I'm traveling. And I'm on my way to Israel. I'm going to be in Jerusalem, Lord willing, in about 18 more hours from now. And I'm excited about going there. And I'm thankful that you're able to do this with me, too. I don't know many people that could pull this off while my head's all over the place walking around an airport.
I'm jealous, man. I haven't been to Israel in a few years, so
you know,
you've done a couple times.
Maybe we should work that out. I think it'd be a really cool Israel trip. Pete and Tom go to Israel. Yeah. I think that would be a great tour. Hey, so let's roll. I know I don't have a lot of time. I thank you for taking your time to join me. Okay, hey, Pete, what are your thoughts on the hurricane, Helene, and then obviously the one coming to Florida right now?
Well, I mean, I'm also obviously disappointed in the federal government's sluggish response, but this is the same administration that has managed to bungle the Afghanistan withdrawal, has turned the border into a national crisis, has allowed for fentanyl to come across, human trafficking, and all manner of things. And it seems like everything they touch, it just falls apart. So I had very low expectations that the federal government was actually going to get this right. But my biggest concern with FEMA is in particular with their kind of lackadaisical response to the situation. In the Army, we used to have a thing called the urgency of the emergency. So it seems like they have no urgency in this emergency, and I think they grossly underestimated this whole thing, so this is definitely their.
Yeah, so we're hearing things like we don't have any money for the victims in North Carolina, but we're going to give $158 million to Lebanon. We've already given for that. We're giving millions and billions of dollars, as you mentioned, to people coming across the border. We have fentanyl problems. It's rather appalling because when I look at Lahaina, it was the same thing. $750 offered to the people of Lahaina during that. There's a lot of speculation how that fire even began. Now you look at this, you have the hurricane coming. I mean, you can't help but wonder what's a lie, what's the truth. You can't trust anyone anymore. Deception is off the charts. You've been with you and your experience teaching Bible prophecy and your experience in the Marines. I mean, it's a bizarre behavior by everyone involved in it, and they're not trusting.
Yeah, the problem is that a lot of what happens is that a rumor will start on Facebook, and it might be true, it might be absolutely true, or it might be a rumor. And then it kind of, Facebook, YouTube, or whatever, and it spreads like a wildfire. But I'll give you an example of how the administration's able to kind of weasel their way around all of these things, because they'll say, for example, that FEMA is not out doing vehicle stops, or they're doing road closures. And FEMA can absolutely deny that, saying, hey, we are not doing that. We are not doing that. But what they're doing is they're having somebody else do that for them. They might have some local, some local law enforcement in certain areas block off the road, and then they're going to give them the order saying, "Hey, you can't do this, you can't do that." But at the same time, they're kind of washing their hands of the whole thing, saying, "See, we aren't physically doing it." So it's really about watching what they watching what they say, but also paying attention to the things they don't say.
So I'm on the road right now. Obviously, you're on the road too. Working and both trying to make this connection with everything. So I got this quote from Hannah Arendt. She passed away in 1975, German historian and philosopher. And this is a quote attributed to her: "This constant line It's not aimed at making the people believe a lie, but ensuring that no one believes anything anymore. A people that can no longer distinguish between truth and lies cannot distinguish between right and wrong. And such a people deprived of the power to think and judge is without knowing and willing it, completely subjected to the rule of lies. For such people, you can do whatever you want. I don't know if she really said those now, but it certainly fits with everything that it seems that we are observing, and the people are being put into a place where it's about mass manipulation by this government, and it's not just the U.S. government. I mean, we look at this globalist agenda, Pete. The whole thing just seems like this is intentional. But plus the gaslighting, the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we knew there was going to be an October surprise coming. We just didn't know what it would be, and I don't know. I don't know how much mankind is involved with steering hurricanes or adding things into the atmosphere to intensify them. Or we know that we have the capability to do it, but I haven't seen any direct evidence as of yet. So I'm cautious in how I address it, but I'm also not going to put it beyond the scope of something the United States would or would not do. We know we can do it, and we know that we've done it in the past. So I think we just got to really dig and look for the cui bono, kind of like who benefits from this or that. And I think this is it's going to be devastating for the South, in particular Trump country, as we come into the election, for them to get their voting systems online. So unless they go back to all back to like paper ballots, I don't know how a lot of these counties are going to be able to do it other than paper ballots, because a lot of them don't even have electricity back yet, or power. So that's something to keep an eye on going forward.
That's a great point. This certainly has a lot of people becoming more and more suspicious about what's going on in Washington anyways. Let me switch gears here for a few minutes. So your background as military combat veteran and aviator is quite unique. I remember I've talked to you about that before, even when we were in Australia last year. You used some of your experience in the messages that you gave when we were in Australia and New Zealand. As you think of these things, how do those experiences influence your journey in writing about Bible prophecy and then you're teaching in apologetics? And then we're going to shift over to Israel in just a minute too. And if we have time, I'm going to ask you about digital currency, if that's on track. But let's start with your experience in leading you to Bible prophecy.
Yeah, I think I didn't have my come to Jesus moment until 2007. So I had already been in the military for about 10 years at that point. And today is my friend's anniversary as well, that his death. I've shared that experience before about how his death impacted me. But I think I was getting ready to go to Afghanistan. That was my next jump right after my come to Jesus moment. That was September. I deployed to Afghanistan in January 1st, or right around the beginning of January. And it certainly put a new perspective on how I understood the world. And I think going into Afghanistan and being able to look around and then really I started to study prophecy when I was in Afghanistan. And in fact, when I wrote my book, Hobo, that's where I started writing that book at. And I feel like it's given me a more grounded perspective. I've been to the Middle East. I spent about 3.5 years there in various countries. I've been to Israel, I've been to Jordan, I've been to Saudi Arabia and all these other countries. And when I look at prophecy and I look at how things are supposed to happen, I think the biggest thing for me is that it's caused me to look at the logistics of how things are going to actually play out. So like we know the rapture can happen in a moment, in the instant, in the blink of an eye. But when you talk about like Gog and Magog or the rebuilding Babylon or all those other kind of things, that's where my background and my experience of having been in those countries really kind of plays into it, because I'm thinking, okay, well, this is going to take, if this is going to happen this way, it's going to take years, because even if everything went right, it would still take years. I mean, so that's how, for me, it's given me that kind of a grounded perspective. And also I tend to look at all prophecy, and I kind of backwards plan from the event backwards to see how things would actually have to play out. So I don't know.
Like reverse engineering.
Yeah.
Well, your knowledge and understanding is fantastic, and you're a thinker. You're not somebody who just reads something and goes with it. You think through things, which I appreciate a lot. As we watch what's happening in Israel, where do you see coming out of this? I know biblically we do know that Israel's trying to turn to the Lord, and the time of the Gentiles will be full. But I mean, there's a lot in there. Right now, there's still rockets all over up north. We're supposed to be down the Gaza envelope in a couple of days. Looking forward to going there. I don't know if my wife's looking forward to going there, but she's with me, so she's going. But where do you see this going? Do you think the war's going to continue to escalate? We know eventually there has to be peace, but how do you see things develop?
Well, honestly, looking back on this year, since it's right on the 1 year anniversary, I would have thought that Israel would have had the Gaza cleaned up, back in May at the latest. So I'm surprised on how long that side took, but I think most people underestimated how built up Hamas had become. I'm surprised at the speed and the ingenuity with how they've handled Hezbollah thus far. I think that was their biggest concern, even more so than Hamas. I mean, the biggest threat was always Hezbollah. So it's surprising to me, but I mean, you got to think, Amir Sarfati mentioned this, that, as terrible as October 7th was, it was probably the one thing that would bring Israel back to being really focused on who they are as a people and the threats they face. I don't know that anything else would have shaped this generation. I mean, most of the folks from the last big major tragedy that they suffered in the Holocaust, that was 70 plus years ago. So most of that generation is gone, and generations, so it took something like this for them to wake up. And so I think this is going to lead to the ultimately to the clearing of all enemies, all these threats in the immediate area right now. So I think that will set them up for the Gog-Magog conflict that was being built in the background.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I'm looking forward to, they're just interviewing people on the streets and asking about their unity. Do you feel more unified now? Because now everybody's being attacked. It doesn't matter what your political persuasion is, your religious persuasion, or any of that. In the end, there's mainly Jews that are being attacked there. But then you have the anti-Semitism that is obviously here in the West. So I think it's just a great point. It's something that is caused them to realize, listen, we're still Jews regardless of anything else. And Israel is our land. You often discuss the rebirth of Israel as a key sign to the end times. Why is Israel so pertinent in biblical prophecy?
Well, I can cut out that last part. So I was just thinking, you said Israel and what is the other things I look at?
Why is Israel so pivotal in biblical prophecy?
I mean, they're God's timepiece. I mean, God appointed them. God appointed a certain amount of time for them to finish all things, basically. And we know that up until the time Christ was died on the cross, that accounted for 483 out of the 490 years. So that last 7 years was never finished historically. There was nothing in the first century, and then by 70 AD, the temple was destroyed. So there was no temple to desecrate at that point. So we know that historically the Jews, and even I think the Romans and the Turks or some other groups, had offered to rebuild the temple, but it's never been built, and it's not going to be until the time is right. And so just with the coming back together of Israel as a nation, I don't even start in 1948. I go back to 1897 with the First Zionist Congress, and then 1917 to the Balfour Declaration. Then 1947 with the UN vote, the nation of Israel coming together in 1948 to declare themselves a sovereign state, to which President Truman was the first world leader on record to contact them and acknowledge their sovereignty. 1967, recapturing of Jerusalem. 1977, with the start of the peace accords that lasted for about 40 years. And were just a failed, every time they tried it, it failed. It just turned into intifada, more violence. And then declaring that Jerusalem is the eternal capital. And here we are, just a few years beyond that, and all of this has happened thus far. So I think if Israel keeps going and they don't stop, I feel like they are going to be able to clean out their immediate threats on their northern border, southern border, even in Judea, or what the world calls the West Bank.
It's just so fascinating to see all of these things taking place as we watch the development. You've mentioned increasing convergence of prophetic signs. What do you think are the most urgent signs to be aware of today?
There was a Russian spy back in the 70s. I think his name was Yuri Bezmenov.
Yuri Bezmenov, yeah.
Bezmenov, yeah. And he said that one of the last things that happens in a culture, and the Soviet spies, they're probably one of their main jobs was to go around and get nations to fall apart and collapse their governments and things. And he said one of the final things that they did to finally break the yoke of people's will is to destroy their religion. So they went in there and they would do whatever they had to corrupt and pervert the religion to the point that it falls apart. And I think we're seeing that now playing out in very shocking and frightening ways as the culture continues to lurch hard left. So we'll see what happens with the. I think if Trump wins, I feel like there is going to be this sense of normalcy that most average Americans are going to kind of fall back onto, and it might be add to a little bit of complacency. But I certainly think that Israel will be they'll feel much more comfortable with a Trump administration in power than with a Harris-Walz administration.
Yeah, I can't imagine not feeling comfortable at all with Harris-Walz. And I also believe that if Trump does win, we'll see civil unrest like we've never witnessed before in our time. I think it's going to be off the charts. You've noted also, Pete, that modern technology accelerates the fulfillment of prophetic events. Can you give maybe just a couple of examples? I know we don't have much time left, but how technology is shaping your understanding of prophecy?
Well, I think one of the biggest things for me is the whole Internet of Things movement. And when I was in the Army, that was the first time I really heard that term. And at the time, they were trying to do it the military Internet of Things, so the MIOT. And so I started to look into this, and it seems like that is going to be between that, the total global accessibility of Wi-Fi. You see how big Wi-Fi is now, even with Hurricane Helene. You got guys like Elon Musk, trucking in, hundreds of these Starlink or what they call those things to connect to the internet, portals or whatever. And I think between him and Bill Gates, they're going to have the whole world blanketed. So the fact that all of the technology is moving into this Internet of Things, where everything becomes a smart device, it becomes a sensor in a way, because it reports information. It can do surveillance. It can do all manner of things. And then on the top of that, that's the fact that the whole globe is going to be covered with these low Earth orbit satellites that will provide Wi-Fi internet access everywhere in the world. I think that this is probably one of the key things that's going to help establish the beast kingdom to maintain or to gain total global control over the earth. So definitely the Internet of Things, the mosaic approach to warfare that we've seen, where, if every smart device, the mosaic means that it depends on a sensor and a decision maker and then an executor. So the sensor could be anything. And I think, these things right here, smartphones or whatever, that is the perfect thing to be a sensor. And we can see how Israel used that for their advantage in this attack on Hezbollah between the pagers and the walkie-talkies that really kind of kickstarted the whole Northern Front attacks that resulted with the deaths of Nasrallah and then his deputy, the guy that took over after him, that was also taken out. So I think that's a small glimpse into what's coming, and I'm fearful for those who remain left behind. And it's as hard as it is to wrap our minds around the damage that Hurricane Helene has done. I think it's even more. I mean, that's nothing compared to what's coming inside the 70th week itself. And you're talking about the deaths of probably 1.5 billion people in just a few short years. That's carnage and death and destruction level that we can't really process.
Wow. And you have firsthand experience that with being in the military, being some of the things that you're doing now. You can see things in your mind that you can't. There's things that you can't unsee. So you have a perspective that the average human being isn't going to be able to really even comprehend. Pete, we covered a lot of ground today. I want to thank you, but I want to ask for a closing thought from you, maybe a word of hope. But first of all, everybody, can keep Jan in prayer. We'll have her on in a couple of weeks. And also, Jack Hibbs will be joining me tomorrow. And after that, you'll be seeing me in Jerusalem, Lord willing, keeping you updates with friends like Pete and some other people, some other guys. And Pete, closing thoughts for everybody.
Yeah, well, we don't know the day or the hour for the rapture of the church, but we know it's coming soon. We recognize the season, and we're cognizant of that. So I would just tell believers out there to head on a swivel, especially if you live in urban areas or you live in a blue state or blue counties and blue cities. Head on a swivel, just kind of be constantly on the lookout for things that, staying aware of what's going on around you. I think we need to be able to lean into the storm. And by that, I mean, we're prepared. I'm not saying to become preppers, but, just common sense stuff, having extra water, canned goods, basic things that you need, particular kinds of medicine that you might require. Go ahead and stock up now without hoarding, but just have them there ready to go. And then finally, just keep looking up, man. We keep our eyes fixed on our blessed hope, who's Jesus Christ. And I think that's the three things that I can offer to folks, just to as we go into this uncharted territory here, this close to the end.
Amen. And it's getting faster and faster. Pete, really, just it was great to see you again. Great to reconnect. I haven't connected in a while.
Yeah.
Wonderful to see you. We'll keep you in prayer. Everybody keep Pete in prayer. He's on the road doing some work that is very much needed right now. And I'm on my way to Israel. Yes, I really am at LAX. This is the worst part about my trip. But Pete will be praying for you. Pray for Jan, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And Jack Hibbs will be tomorrow. God bless everybody.
Yeah.